Mini episode 359 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.info.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode number 359. This is FDH managing partner Rick Morris, along with my fellow FDH Lounge dignitary Kyle Ross, here to break down NFL Week 16 for you. On my picks last week on all the games, 8-8, 2-1 on my big three, 1-0 on my lock pick, bringing me to 107, 108, and 9 for the year on all of them, 20 and 24 on the big three, and 6, 8, and 1 on the lock picks for Kyle. 4 and 3 on his picks, bringing him back to 29 and 29 and 2 for the year. Break-even point profitability going to be coming in the last 2 weeks here. A season in the black, my friend.
Yeah. Thanks for the vine. Thanks for the time, as always, my friend. And 4 straight winning weeks, so it just shows how bad both of us were doing at the beginning of this program. But don't look now, we're starting to sound like experts. And unlike you, from what I understand, I really like this card. I think I have a lot of things to say, as I normally do. So we'll see if we can squeeze it in the time allotted. And I look forward to breaking these games down here with
Full
you.
Slate, so it'll be a challenge. Oh, yeah. But, I'm struggling. I got to tell you, I found this to be maybe the hardest slate of the year. So I'm setting the expectations bar pretty low going in, but let's just take it from here. We lead off with my Miami Dolphins, of course, my 1A team, as I've said in the past. They are at Buffalo. The Dolphins are laying 2.5. It's been a pretty steady 2.5 throughout the week here. One of these rather short road favorites that we've discussed previously on the program. Under the circumstances, momentum being what it is, I understand that momentum is something that a lot of people don't believe in, but the Dolphins inexplicably hot since their big offensive line scandal and offensive line weakening. Don't exactly know why, but Buffalo doesn't have anything to play for. Dolphins are really coming together strongly down the stretch. I had them last week against New England. That was a winner. Certainly not a recommended play, but I like the Dolphins laying the 2.5 on the road this week.
Yeah, it was interesting with Miami beating New England in that they were a very trendy home dog. They opened as a home dog, if you remember, Ricky. They were actually bet for the role of favorite. That almost never works out, but they did. You've mentioned they're hot. They've covered 5 weeks in a row. Their only loss during that span was a loss to Carolina by 4 points. Carolina team that had been equally hot. But you know me on this one, and you know the way I think on these kind of games. Buffalo, nothing to play for. Miami, they're fighting for a playoff spot. Something tells me the Buffalo Bills are going to pull the upset here at home. Not going to recommend it. I'm a little gun shy. I think the number is going to go up to 3. If you're like me and you like to fire on home dogs, I would wait for it to go up to 3. I would imagine you might have to wait till Sunday morning for that to happen. But I think the Bills may pull an upset here. Miami, you talk about the offensive line issues. Somehow they've been able to work around that and win all these games, but they haven't really impressed me, Miami, like another team we're going to get to in a little bit here that I was ranting about to you earlier in the week.
Well, as far as it goes with the Dolphins, and again, this is just going to be my catch-all for the week. I mean, I see you working on that. I understand what you're saying. If it happens, it wouldn't shock me because down the stretch, you always get games like this. You always get games where a team inexplicably pulls it off when they have nothing to play for and the other team has a whole lot on the line. So even the ones I really like this week, I still feel queasy about. So if you're right about this, I won't be shocked.
Two things, Ricky, here. Buffalo actually beat Miami earlier in the year. I have now reminded myself in Miami. And don't the Dolphins, you would know this better than I because you follow the team, don't they always kind of gag in cold weather games late in the year? And, you know, I don't know the last time you went to Buffalo this time of year. It ain't Tahiti.
Yeah.
So
that is an issue.
I can really see this being a gag effort by the Dolphins.
That is an issue. I'll grant you that. But again, in the cold, the snow 2 weeks ago against Pittsburgh, again, for whatever it's worth, and I don't think it was really
That's
clear.
That's true, yeah.
I don't think it was clear, bright, and sunny at the Meadowlands the week before when they thumped the Jets. So, I'm not saying that the demon has been slayed. I'm not saying that. But that's the recent track record kind of goes against the long-term track record. So maybe the two just kind of counteract one another and fizzle off into the atmosphere.
Yeah, well, we shall see. Or they're just due to have that gaffe. I'm telling you. I'm not sold on this. I'll tell you this, because I'm not sold on Miami yet, but if they win here, home date with the Jets to end the year, they may be your sixth AFC playoff team.
They very well might be. And, again, the sixth seed, that would, if they beat the Bills and the Jets, that would put them at 10-6. You could have earned a lot of money at a lot of points during the year betting that the sixth seed in the AFC would somehow be 10-6. But here we go. It just takes one team catching fire, and that would be winning the last five, actually, if that goes down like that. A team that has been on fire ever since, I'd say, about the first quadrant of the season or so, the Carolina Panthers. They are 10-4. They are hosting the New Orleans Saints, also at 10-4, in the NFC South Championship game at Carolina this week. The Panthers are laying a field goal. If the Saints win this one somehow, they will put away the NFC South in all likelihood, and if the Panthers win, then they have a leg up. It won't be completely clinched. Buck Oliver and the delicious Buck Aikman and the delicious Pam Oliver are on the call for this one on Fox. It is.
You listened to delicious Troy Aikman there, didn't you?
yeah. Got to watch my words carefully there, but
one of those Skip Bayless books there.
Yeah. Rumors were that Aikman swung that way, but we're not saying that here. We're not claiming that. No lawsuits.
And not that there's anything wrong with that, for that matter.
Leave it to a Kyle Ross to say that. But in this game, it's funny because when the other two top teams in the NFC played one another, Seattle and San Francisco, 2 weeks back, there was the sense of, okay, Seattle won their game at home. San Francisco is going to win here. It's going to be a split. There was almost a foregone conclusion as far as public opinion, and it turned out to be correct. And I think a lot of people are kind of leaning the same way. Looking at the way the money's going this week, it seems to be a sense that the Panthers are at home. I guess I'm just not feeling it as much, not least of which because the Panthers are so deadly against the run game, 84.9 yards per game given up on the ground, but the Saints don't care. That's not really a strength of what they do. For them, the short pass to Sproles and Thomas essentially is their run game, and it's far from certain that the Panthers can wrap that up as much. Give me the road dog in this one. This is my Jesse James special here. I'll take New Orleans on the road. I think they're going to win and clinch the NFC South.
I'll tell you, the loser of this game, something you didn't mention, Rick Morris.
Yeah.
Is the Saints lost last week at the St. Louis Rams. Another horrible road effort by this team. So the loser of this game.
But I'm not going to overreact, though. I'm not going to overreact to that.
No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. I'm not saying no. You shouldn't. I think you're smart to. But I'll say this: the loser of this game is in trouble because I think San Francisco is going to win out and now get the 5 seed, which is interesting because both of these teams actually beat San Francisco, but because someone's got to lose here. One of them is going to probably finish with a worse record and drop all the way down to 6. So you're talking about a road game probably at Philadelphia or, being at home for a wild card weekend and then hosting a game in the divisional round. So this game, there's a lot on the line. I'm laying off. I really don't have an opinion one way or the other. New Orleans road woes do concern me. There is the revenge angle in play for Carolina. But the fact the Saints are off a loss, you know the way I work, my demented mind. It makes me kind of like them more. I can't see them with 2 bad games in a row like that. Although the Panthers, kind of the same physical team that the Rams are, although they have a much better quarterback. So I don't know. I'm laying away from this game. If I was to do anything, maybe I look at the over. This has become an over league this year, and of all the teams right now, the Saints have the longest under streak at 5 weeks in a row. So maybe time for an under for Drew Brees, or pardon me, an over for Drew Brees and company.
That would be surprising, I think, to all but the hardcore gamblers. New Orleans, of all teams, is consistently coming in under. That probably has to do with the public and setting the number accordingly. The public
high totals, obviously.
Game.
Yeah, they get a lot of high totals. Yeah, the first time these teams played, it was the under cashed by, I believe, a pretty significant margin. Obviously, the Carolina offense and its lack of production had a lot to do with that.
Absolutely. Well, we go from the very critical rematch from 2 weeks ago that took place in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome to the next game here, which is a rematch of the 2000 NFC Championship game, as the Tampa Bay Bucks at 4-10 are looking to get vengeance for that game against the 6-8 St. Louis Rams. Past lounge guest Sam Rosen on the call, along with Keith Evans and Molly McGrath on Fox, 1 o'clock Eastern Time on Sunday from the Edward Jones Dome in St. Louis. And the Rams are laying 5.5 in this one. It's been a pretty steady 5.5 during the week. The thing I keep coming back to when I look at these teams, when I look at the Rams, we've talked about this with the Colts. And when I talked up the Colts in the AFC a couple weeks ago, I talked up some of their wins, and you said, yeah, but look at some of their losses. And the same is true. The Rams are kind of like the NFC equivalent. Ironically, who did they thump? They thumped the Colts, among other teams here. The Rams have some very big wins, not least of which what they did last week against the Saints. But they really kind of tend to play up or down to the level of their competition. So as I look at this one here, give me the 5.5. I don't know how much confidence I have in Tampa Bay winning this one outright, because I still think that Greg Schiano is or should be dead man walking. But I think the Bucks can get within the 5.5. I'll take the points here.
Couple things here. Number one, I thought I said that too about the Colts a couple of weeks ago. Was that you or was that me, or was I just saying that to myself in my head? Maybe we both said it.
I was looking at the one side. Well,
yeah, okay.
I said look at the wins, and you said yeah, but look at the losses. So you you gave the other side of the coin. Yeah.
I thought it was a very astute point that you made there about the Colts, and I like where your head's at here. First recommended play of the week is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Rams in a major letdown mode after upsetting the Saints last week. Both of these teams, I know this will contradict what I just said, but both of these teams, I think, better than most people think. I know that I sent you my power ratings middle of the week, and Tampa Bay, I think, was one of the bigger differences you and I had. You still had them down real low. I think this is a pretty competitive team, all things considered, with the coaching situation. They've been much better in the second half. They had a lot of close losses early on before things reached their nadir. They lost, obviously, the Jets on a bonehead play by the linebacker, David. The linebacker. New Orleans was the last-second field goal loss. Arizona, they blew a second-half lead. And of course, they led Seattle 21-0 in Seattle. So this team was never as bad as that record was. Greg Schiano might be as bad as we think he is, and he may not make it to live next season. But I like the Bucs to possibly take this game outright. St. Louis let down spot off the win over the Saints last week. And by the way, you might have just been a year early with this St. Louis Rams team. I'm telling you, with the 2 draft picks in their hip pocket next April, this team's going to, if they can get a real quarterback in there, this team can be really, really good.
Well, and I think that real quarterback might be Sam Bradford. He was playing well before he got injured. We shall see. He still needs more weapons. I don't count Tavon Austin among them because I don't know that he's an every down threat like you need. I will say this also, too, in looking at this here with Tampa Bay and with their start, because, again, we differ. I think I have them 30 in the latest FDH Lounge Power Rankings, but, wow, we're going to have to look after the season. We're going to have to look and see. Tampa Bay, Giants, Pittsburgh, has there been a year, even Jacksonville, has there been a year where so many teams started out at a certain point and didn't end with a record indicative of that? You start like that, and you should be going 2-14, 3-13, whatever. These teams are going to win 4, 5, in some instances 6 games. Very, very strange, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of is. I think that just speaks to the state of the league right now with a high-variance league. I mean, it used to be, while we were growing up, that teams got pigeonholed. They'd start bad. Okay, everyone agreed that they stunk, and they just stink the rest of the way. It's just not that way. There are just so many coin flip games. The difference between the top and the bottom in this league is not anywhere close to where it used to be in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, certainly, your Houstons, your Jacksonvilles aren't going to fare too well on a consistent basis against the Denvers and Seattles. I understand that. But getting back to the power ratings, I think the difference between like the 9th-rated team and the 20th-rated team in this league right now is nil. I think basically when you take a look at that group, whatever team's at home is going to be laying 3 points. I mean, you can say, your Arizona, a lot of NFC teams, the middle class of the AFC, for lack of a better term, those teams are all basically the same.
I think you're absolutely right about that. That's the way the league is evolving. We go to the Sunday night game. This one got flexed into Sunday night. The Eagles are at home at the Link. They are laying 3 points. Had been 3.5 earlier in the week against Chicago. I got to tell you, this is one of the toughest ones that I looked at as I was going all the way down the slate here. The thing that ultimately is making up my mind for me, Eagles, 152.9 yards per game on the ground. The Bears, 152.4 given up. We could be seeing a 350-yard effort from LaShawn McCoy Sunday night. Old Shady might be running it all night long. I go back to last week against my Cleveland Browns here, when the Browns had the equivalent of Rick Morris and Kyle Ross out there in the second half racking up a lot of yards against the Bears. What are they going to do against a real running game? Push comes to shove in a game where I just really can't make up my mind otherwise. Give me the Eagles laying the 3.5, or laying the 3, rather.
Remember what I just said about these teams in the middle? They're all basically even. The home team's going to be laying 3 points. What a nice segue that we go into this game, because that's the case right here. I mean, these two teams are in that middle group, and I hate this game. I usually always, us handicappers love to play those Sunday night games, wink, wink, and I cannot get a feel for this game at all. I do love the angle you brought up with McCoy facing a terrible Bears run defense. I had just listened to something earlier this morning, the 2,000-yard club, the 7 running backs that belong to that group. We're talking about what it was, and someone said, the only guy who's even sniffing that is LaShawn McCoy, and he would need 2 ridiculous games to get there. I think it was like 400 or 500 something, so that's probably not going to happen. But he could get a big chunk of change here against this Bears team. And, not to pat myself on the back last week, I did go against the Eagles as they lost outright to the Minnesota Vikings. I would just like to reiterate that. But I don't think that's indicative of their level of play. And I'm not sure what the Bears are a team that I just have not had a good read on all year. So I'm sitting this one out. I just don't know about the Chicago Bears team. Even if they were to win the division, even if either of these teams were to win the division, I don't see them doing much damage in the playoffs. Yeah.
Neither one of them is making it out of the first round at home, no question about that. McCoy, I tell you what, he makes $2,000. He joins that club. We're going to have to drop an asterisk on it because one of those games will be in against the Bears defense. That's how sucky they are with their run game. No question about it. And again,
they can't stop anyone. They can't stop anyone. And I don't want to hear that they missed Brian Urlacher either, okay? Because he was on the downside of his career. All right.
Yeah, they couldn't stop Stephen Hawking right now. That's how bad their run defense is. So.
That was uncalled for,
Well, there's always a fair number of uncalled for remarks. Yeah, exactly. Well, if you think that's uncalled for, how about my characterization of this next game here? As the Browns face the Jets, this is a game where the Jets are looking to avenge the divisional round of the 1986 NFL playoffs.
For God's sake.
I'm telling you, they still remember that game in New York. They had the 10-point lead on the Brownies late. That was the week before the drive game. That's why I know the rest of the country doesn't remember it. But that was their version of the drive, essentially the way they choked against the Browns. And, again, in this game, the Jets are laying 2.5. It opened as a pick'em. And as I look at this, again, struggling very, very hard to get a read on it because, I can't imagine either of these teams going over clean in the middle. Can't imagine either of these teams getting their arms raised here. But I will tell you this, as I look at it, I just keep coming back to Jason Campbell, limited, and yes, he makes mistakes. Again, a game manager. Geno Smith, you talk about high variance up and down, a guy who can just make a lot of mistakes. The Browns have been getting pretty good at getting turnovers against their defense. They've been easier to get picked apart the last couple of weeks. It's been easier to pick them apart, I guess I should say, in better English than it was earlier in the season. Without being facetious, I'm going to call it this way, that the Browns, I look for them to self-destructively in this game win a game where I will be rooting very, very hard against them for them to preserve their draft position. This is your typical Browns screw-up in December. Make it so that you lose about 5 slots in the draft order. I'll take the Browns in the 2.5. God help me in this game. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I kind of see that. I mean, I'm not going to get involved here when you got two bad teams really not playing for anything. The Jets I had them last week, and they did manage to cover a big number against Carolina. But at 6 wins, they're not that good. Their point differential, one of the worst in the league. Cleveland always seems to come out on the short end of the stick in close games. They're probably due to win a game. So, yeah, I could kind of see that, but I'm not going on a limb here. Again, like that New Orleans-Carolina game, I would lean maybe towards the over. This is one of the lowest totals on the board, and I know neither of these teams are reminiscent of the 89 Niners, but, the way these games have been going this season, average score, combined point total, a little above 46 points, that'd be a league record. It's a lot of value when you only have a total around 40, so if I was to do something, maybe it'd be the over.
Okay. All right, that makes a lot of sense, I would say. Jumping ahead to a game that earlier in the year I would have thought of as, in all likelihood, an AFC Championship game preview. Kind of funny to look at it that way now. The 11-3 Broncos at the 2-12 Texans. Again, it is, as past lounge guest, Ian Eagle is on this game along with Dan Fouts. As I look at this, again, hard to get a read. It's a good spot on the road. This is not going to be a recommended pick, obviously, but again, I think the Broncos are going to be shot out of a cannon after the way they choked against San Diego on Thursday night. I'm just going to say again, the extra 3 days rest, extra time to stew about it. I think it's going to be a shootout. Would it shock me if Houston sneaks in and backdoors it? No, there's very little this week that would shock me. I am so wishy-washy about everything, but all things considered, I wouldn't want to be whoever's playing Denver this week, and it just happens to be a team that's won 2 of its last 14 games. So give me Denver laying the 10.5.
Yeah, boy. Oh, boy, Ricky, have I taught you nothing? Have I taught you nothing? Now, let's back up here a little bit. First of all, we should both take some time to pat ourselves on the back over both having San Diego. That was a recommended play for me. I must be honest that I did not think they would win the game outright, but they did. Makes me, even if they don't make the playoffs, I still think San Diego is better than both Baltimore and Miami. Yes, Miami fans, I know that the Dolphins beat the Chargers, but I still think San Diego is better. The game was in Miami. It was relatively close. And Houston was not one of my better picks last week against Indianapolis. A total and complete no-show effort by the Texans in their first game under interim coach Wade Phillips, showing why he should probably never be a permanent head coach in this league anymore. But when I look at this game, Ricky, I don't look at the team names. I look at the number. I see a home team getting 10 points in the National Football League in 2013. And I will note that since 2009, home dogs of 8 or more are now 28-4 against the spread. That includes Houston covering against New England a few weeks ago. I am recommending against all logic the Houston Texans this week. By the way, if you're an underdog player like me, again, they don't pay me. I'm just trying to help you out, folks. 5 dimes. You can always get a better number as they try to avoid the favorite players with their teasers. I think you can get Houston at like 12 or 13 actually there. If you want to lay a little extra juice, I would recommend doing that. I know I will because, quite frankly, 10 doesn't feel like enough. 13 does, though. The number, I mean, this is about all the league's best and worst team. 13, I feel a lot more comfortable than 10. I do think Houston keeps this within 2 touchdowns.
Okay. All right, I can understand that. But the way you were setting it up with how horrific Houston was last week and the way you're going on the game was a Vince Russo-worthy swerve.
I mean, it was one of those games, Ricky, you know, I try to watch them all. The first half is like me just like looks like I have some sort of disease as I just like throw my head around looking at TVs. This was maybe the first game I gave up on last Sunday. I mean, Houston, I just looked, I'm like, oh my God, there's no chance. They had an interception early of Luck in the red zone, but they didn't do anything with it, and then they just imploded. I mean, I don't even think they're trying. Hopefully Teddy Bridgewater does come out for their sake, because I really think with a real quarterback in there, this team could bounce back in a major way. But as for Sunday, hopefully they can hang their heads a little high with a close loss.
Well, we shall see on that one. The next one here, I don't think it's good for anybody's sanity if we spend a lot of time talking about this next ugly one here. You've got Tennessee laying 5.5 at Jacksonville. CBS has such respect for this game that they're putting the crew of Andrew Catalon and Adam Archuleta on the game. Kind of says it all, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's the first time I've seen them doing an NFL game this year, which probably tells you all you need to know. In this one, a battle of two uglies, Andrew Catalon and Adam Archuleta. By the way, when I say the two uglies, I'm speaking about the teams. I'm not slurring the announcers, although I am kind of laughing that the most obscure crew that CBS has is on the game. Jacksonville won outright at Tennessee. Give me the 5.5 in this one. I just don't know that Tennessee's 5.5 better than anybody right now.
Yeah, you know what? I guess this makes sense why they would have to add a crew, because there's no Thursday game.
Yeah.
And the Monday game is two NFC teams. So they probably needed to add it. They probably needed to add a crew, because there's eight AFC games on Sunday. Oh, okay.
If I had a guess, I would say probably CBS Sports Network guys that do college games. If I had a guess, I don't even know.
Well, it's probably more interesting than anything we could talk about on this actual game. I'll say this. If I were to play this game, I would throw Tennessee in a teaser with Cincinnati, who we'll talk about later. I would tease Tennessee to like +1.5, because I think they are going to win this game, but you're right. I would not want to lay points with Ryan Fitzhipster on the road.
Okay, I can understand that. Next up, we've got one that would be one of my Why Ask Why games this year, but I've decided to go the other way on my Why Ask Why games and just assume that the lines are bad. It's the 9-5 Cardinals at the 12-2 Seahawks. This is one where Seattle is laying 10.5, down from 11.5 earlier. And again, I just keep coming back to the Cardinals just have had such a great defense, especially at home, and I understand that, and it's a cold weather game, but you've got Seattle coming cross country from having played the Giants last week. You've trained me to look for those things, Kyle. So it seems like a lot, as great as the Cardinals defense is, and I think Seattle's the best team in the league, but explosive offensively is not anything I would call them. I mean, they're extremely efficient. They're very efficient, maybe the most efficient team in the league offensively at getting it done, however, whether it be the run or the pass, but explosive team to be laying 10.5 when they're playing a defense this great, not Seattle. So give me Arizona to come in through the back door.
Well, the reason Seattle's laying this much is because they're at home, and even your grandmother at this point knows how good the Seahawks are at home. They just bludgeon people. That said, this is a recommended play for me on Arizona. We talked about before the year, and we kind of laughed that a lot of the folks in Vegas I've been reading liked this Arizona Cardinals team. I don't want to say they warned us, because, I mean, it's not like the world's the worst place because they're a good team this year, but they are a good team this year, and there is no doubt in my mind that this is the fifth best team in the NFC right now. I know that's kind of a weird distinction to hold, but they're better than anyone in the East. They're better than anyone in the North. We talked about that Philly-Chicago game, winner of that one, or if either team had won their division going forward, we don't like either of them to do much in the playoffs. I think Arizona's better than both teams. Division dogs, I've talked about this in the past, division dogs getting more than one score, usually a pretty reliable bet. And I think Seattle's got a pretty easy path in front of them right now. They're going to be the one seed in the NFC. I just see them kind of sleepwalking to a victory here. It's going to be pretty tough, actually. I shouldn't undersell Arizona. Like, Seattle's just not going to try and still be able to win. But last week, their defense came to play, but that efficient offense you spoke of with the Seahawks wasn't that efficient. The Giants really helped them out with about 800 turnovers. So give me the points with Arizona.
Okay, that sounds good. Still 8 games to go here as we look at this, so I'm going to keep my things succinct here because, again, this is a slate that really confuses me, as I said. Next up, the 5-9 Giants at the 7-7 Lions. 4-time lounge guest Kenny Albert on the crew for Fox, along with Moose Johnston and Tony Siragusa. Detroit laying 9, down from 11. I'm guessing that 11 was right at before people had a chance to really digest their putrid turd of a performance against Baltimore. I understand truly how bad the Giants are at this point, but Detroit laying 9 seems like a lot just based on how on some of their efforts recently here. That Green Bay game seems like a long time ago. Give me the Giants getting 9 on the road.
I have no interest in playing this game. Over-under could be about 8 turnovers between the two sides here. That line you spoke of, when it was like at 11, that was before the Monday night game. So you're kind of right on.
That makes all the sense in the world.
But yeah, a lot of times they put up a line and they take it down before the Monday night game, and then they repost. And certainly it's no surprise to see the Lions favored by less after that clone cover performance. Jim Schwartz, his job is on life support right now. If the Lions don't make the playoffs, they ought to be ashamed of themselves. I can't endorse either of these teams, though, right now. No way.
No,
just two.
I understand
that. The Giants just looked awful last week at home against Seattle. I mean, they look like the worst team in the league, for crying out loud. Maybe, I don't know if they looked worse than Oakland, actually, come to think of it. But
and what a nice segue, because that's who we got up next here. It's the 4-10 Raiders at the 7-7 Chargers. The Chargers are laying 10 in this one, down from 11.5. Again, I'm going to oversimplify this one completely because I'm so confused by all the games this week and which way to go. The Chargers just always lay a turd against the Raiders. They did earlier this year. I can't count the number of times in recent years when they should have won and didn't. Give me the Raiders getting the 10. I know they looked horrible last week, but I'm not going to overreact to that. I'm going to more so go on their recent history against San Diego. San Diego chokes against them, Kyle. They did earlier this year, and they have regularly the last couple of years.
Wow. I mean this with every amount of respect I can give to another human being, Ricky. You liking Oakland actually makes me like them less.
Okay.
Because
that sounds very respectful.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Here I need to go Bill Parcells. No disrespect, but
I'm not Oriental, so no disrespect taken.
Yeah. You know me. I really want to make a case for Oakland, but it appeared last week that they had never seen a screen pass.
Yeah.
Which, it was horrible the way they were playing defense against the Chiefs. This team has sort of descended onto the level that we thought they would before the season. I know they turned a lot of heads with some early season wins. One of them was against San Diego. You mentioned that, and I'm glad you did. It was a late start time, if you remember. That was at 11:30 Eastern start time because there was the baseball game it conflicted with. Chargers turned it over 5 times that day, a lot of them in the first half. That game represents the only time this year San Diego, who I'm still campaigning for to get into the playoffs because I think they're better than both Miami and Baltimore, only time they've lost by more than one possession all year, San Diego.
Wow.
It was still Raiders. I'd love to make a case for the Raiders. Again, double-digit dog in a division game. San Diego's in a letdown spot off a huge win over Denver. But I just don't feel comfortable taking Oakland. I tried last week, and I know they made a game of it halfway through, but I think if you would have watched this defense, it was like they didn't understand the point was to tackle the other team.
I understand. Yeah, okay.
And they have no
sense.
quarterback either. They have no quarterback either. So
I do grasp how bad the Raiders are, but the Raiders have looked pretty bad in the past going into San Diego games, and the Chargers have been the miracle elixir. So we shall see. Next up here, this is going to be short and sweet because it doesn't appear to be a line yet pending Aaron Rodgers and his status, although he looks like he's probably not going to be in this week, at least as a starter. Pittsburgh at Green Bay. Pittsburgh looking to avenge the Super Bowl game from a couple of years ago. This looked like it would be one of the better games at the start of the season. The Steelers have not really held up their end. Green Bay marginally has, as they're in the playoff race to a more serious extent. But again, no line. I will tweet on the FDH Lounge account this weekend when we get a line what my pick's going to be.
Yeah, no player more valuable to the point spread than Aaron Rodgers. He's the difference between this game probably being like a pick'em or Green Bay favored by a touchdown. So, again, no line. I have no pick. I have no information. Yeah. No analysis.
Yeah. You know, how can we? We got nothing. Next up here, a rematch of the last two AFC Championship games. It's New England at Baltimore, and Baltimore, notwithstanding only being 8-6 to the Patriots 10-4, favored by 2.5 at home, had been 1 earlier in the week. I look at this again, as much as I loathe the Ravens, I'm much higher on them clearly than you are at this point. I have them number 9 in the FDH Lounge power rankings at this point. They got momentum. Yeah, they're winning ugly, but that's what teams do a lot of times here. And again, New England's won some pretty ugly games this year too. Let's not pretend that they're the finest, most sterling 10-4 in the history of the league. So give me Baltimore at home in a game that they need more than New England does. Patriots
all day long, getting points off a loss. Belichick. I don't know what it was. You know me. Bizarre things irk me to the nth degree. Ricky, I can only imagine sometimes the look of confusion on your face when I start texting you about what's irritating me in the world of sports today, and it's something completely out of left field. But no team is angering me more than the Baltimore Ravens, because the narrative and all the national shows Tuesday morning was, here come the Ravens. Oh, they're so good, vintage Ravens. Let me tell you something about your Baltimore Ravens, okay? They didn't score a touchdown last week, needed 6 field goals against a team that's incompetently coached. I know I have the Lions was a dumb pick, all right? 2 weeks ago, they had to score twice in the final minute at home to beat the Minnesota Vikings. They needed to withstand a 2-point conversion Thanksgiving night to get by the Steelers, who are minus about 600 offensive linemen. The Baltimore Ravens, if they look, I realize I was saying nasty things about them at this time last year, and all they did was win the Super Bowl. This team is not as good as that team. And by the way, I'd like to also go on the record and say I'm probably the only person in Cleveland, Ohio, that likes the Ravens a lot less when they don't have Ray Lewis. Just want to put that on the table.
Don't go say that in Akron.
Yes, thank you. We should not broadcast this there. But I like New England to bounce back. I really do. I think they're the better team getting points. I like that combination. In my power rankings, I have New England 6th. That's with a drop from last week's loss. I believe I have Baltimore 12th, I want to say.
Okay. I have New England 6th as well, but I have Baltimore 9th. That takes us to the Monday night game, a rematch of the NFC Championship game from last year. This one a little more unthinkable when you look at this year's records. The 4-10 Falcons, who have just been born under a bad sign this year, that everything's happened to them, versus the 10-4 49ers, who at this point are locked into a wild card spot, more or less. Niners are laying 12 in this one, down from 13.5. Don't really have a good handle on this one here, but again, I'll lay the points in this one. I just don't think that the Falcons are going to be up enough for this one here. This is a potential statement game for the 49ers in prime time. Can't win the division, but a chance to make a statement, I think they will.
You know me, I don't like to lay double digits, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to be caught taking Atlanta in this game. San Francisco's done a pretty good job of beating up the bad teams on their schedule. In this era of offense, I feel we don't notice the really bad defensive teams enough. Atlanta is horrible defensively. Just horrible.
They are.
So, I don't know, maybe San Francisco in the first half. By the way, I got screwed on my first half wager last 49ers when there were 2 touchdowns in the final 2 minutes after there were 10 points in the first 28 minutes. I'm not happy about that, Rick Morris.
Right, exactly. So this takes us to our big 3 picks for me for the week. First up, the 7-7 Cowboys at the 3-11 Redskins.
How about them Cowboys?
Coming off of one of the worst losses of the Garrett Romo era, and that really says something here. But again, another Dallas-Washington matchup, as we've seen over the years here. Where have you gone, Clint Longley? A nation turns its lonely eyes to you. But for the time being, it will be Kirk Cousins in at quarterback for the Washington Redskins, who are getting 2.5 at home. Again, nobody over the years has taken more cheap shots at the Cowboys, accurate cheap shots, but cheap shots nonetheless, about them in the month of December. Very uncharacteristic on my part. Lay the 2.5 in a game where, again, they're going to be out for blood on Sunday. And the Redskins, one word right now, defenseless.
Would there be any ending to this game that surprised you?
No.
I almost just want to have this game on, just wait for the most unfathomable play in the history of NFL football at the end of this game. I'm laying off. I can't trust either of these teams. For the first time all year, I just don't think Dallas is going to get in the playoffs. I really thought that even though Philadelphia had the game up on them, Dallas would be able to win at home and take this thing. I'm not feeling them anymore.
You talk about what could happen here, what the outcome in this game could be. Let's just put it this way, Kyle. Let's just put it on the table, and in a sense that your namesake might perhaps appreciate. The outcome of this game is more up for anything than Jenna Jameson. I think we can pretty much agree on that as we assess it.
Yeah, very good, by the way. Very good. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. The nice oblique reference here. The next game on my big three recommendations is possible at this point, maybe probable playoff preview in the AFC wildcard round. It's the 9-5 Colts at the 11-3 Chiefs. And again, if this is a preview, it would be at the Lucas Oil Stadium facility, which I was at a couple weeks ago for the Big Ten championship game. Great place to watch a game, by the way. But again, in this one here, the Chiefs are laying 7. It's been a pretty steady 7 through the week. And again, I brought up the statistic going into last week. The Chiefs 10-1 straight up against teams not named the Denver Broncos, make that 11-1 going into this game here. I was on the Chiefs for my lock play the last 2 weeks, and they validated me in that. They're not a lock pick for me this week, but they're in my big three. I'm staying on them. They got the momentum. The Colts, it's kind of hard to get a handle on them recently here. I was a little bit too pessimistic on them last week after being a little too optimistic on them previously. I risk lurching back coming off of that game last week here. But, again, I do think that they are not going to be able to sustain that momentum. Beating Houston doesn't really prove much of anything right now. So give me the Chiefs in the cold on the road. They're the better team.
I'm surprised at this from you because if I remember, you talk about being optimistic with the Colts. You had them against the Bengals a couple weeks ago. I got the Chiefs and Bengals as fairly identical teams. You know me, I've said a lot of nasty things about the Colts the last couple months, but now's the next.
I got the Chiefs way over the Bengals. I got the Chiefs at 7, Bengals at 12. At the bottom of the first tier, bottom of the second tier, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I have them personally even, those two teams, the Bengals and the Chiefs. Believe it or not, I would maybe actually lean to the Colts a little bit. This line seems a little bit too high. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't like the Chiefs in this range, but I'm laying off this one personally. And you mentioned it, a playoff preview. I agree.
Okay, all right, and we are almost out of time, but I will get the last one in here. My lock pick of the week, 1,000-star gold-plated lock of the one for NFL Week 16. It is the Cincinnati Bengals. They are laying 7 against Minnesota. Had been 7.5 earlier on. I think the Bengals are a fraud relative to some of the other teams in the AFC playoff race at this point. And I even have Baltimore above them in my power rankings. But in this spot here, letdown spot for the Vikings after the hugely improbable win last week, which props to you. You called it. Bengals need this one. I think the Bengals will cover the 7.
I couldn't disagree with you more on the Bengals. I really, really like them. And what's really interesting is I'm not so sure about them covering the spread, but I referenced this earlier when we talked about the Titans. I'd throw them in a teaser with the Titans, 7-point teaser, tease them down to a pick because they will win this game against Minnesota. They have not lost a game at home all year. Minnesota has not won a road game all year. Cincinnati off an outright loss. Minnesota off an outright win. So the Bengals certainly should bounce back. They will win the AFC North. Thank you very much.
They will win that. To me, they just haven't been the same team since suffering their defensive losses, including Geno Atkins, who's one of the best players in the league, period. So my big three, Kansas City, Dallas, Cincinnati. Cincinnati's my lock. Your picks here for the week, your recommended ones, Tampa Bay, Houston, Arizona, and New England. So a lot of fun, Kyle. Look forward to convening here as we get ready for NFL Week 17. In anticipation of that, I wish you a Merry Christmas.
And a happy holidays to you and Mr. O'Reilly. Thank you very much.
Nice Marxist response.
Yes.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the Periodic Table of Elements.